Welcome back into Studio 5. For most teenagers, attending college is the automatic next step after high school. They might make those academic benchmarks, but how do you know if your teen is emotionally prepared for college? Julie Nelson is the author of the brand new book, Keep It Real and Grab a Plunger, 25 Tips for Surviving Parenthood. She said there are 3 questions every parent should ask themselves before sending their child to college. It is sometimes that natural next step that we feel like should be taken. Do parents sometimes send those kids off blindly?
Yeah, I think we overemphasize SAT scores, ACT scores, GPA, and get them in all those rigorous courses, but we think, are they ready emotionally? And we overlook that.
And that's a big question to ask.
Yeah, we think, okay, I'm just gonna send them to college and poof, automatically they'll become mature and they can handle everything there, even though we've been enabling them all the way along.
So for parents who are preparing to send those seniors off to college, not too late in these final few months to develop some of those emotional skills?
Right, self-reliance first of all, right? Self-reliance, can they do things that you normally would have done for them? Drive them to the store because they don't know how to get there. You know, how do I find the grocery store? Well, get in the car and go find your way there. And pack in their lunches. You know, doing those little things for them. You wake them up still in the morning. There's a lot of parents who are still doing those things, and you have to ask yourself, when their child's doing something and you're saying, oh, I'll help you out with that, wait a minute. In a year or two, they're gonna be doing that on their own. Can they do it on their own? Let them figure it out.
The morning alarm clock, I think, is a big reminder for a lot of parents. We're used to kind of shaking them out of bed and booting them out the door. Maybe let them be late to learn that lesson?
Let them be late to learn that lesson. Other things too. If they forget their lunch, don't rush in and go get it for them or make it for them in the morning. Let them figure those things out. Ask yourself before you do something for your child, in a year or two, they'll be doing that on their own. Can they do it? And let them fail a little bit in some of those areas so they can learn from their mistakes.
Does that self-reliant preparedness also come into check when it comes to financially being prepared for college?
Absolutely. So your child should know not just skills, but hard work and discipline. Can they work hard for their goals, even if that's earning scholarships and maintaining those scholarships, or be able to have a job so they can provide themselves when they're in school?
Sure. You say now's a great time to assess their problem-solving skills. Explain how we can assess that and then maybe help work on those if those skills feel lacking.
Yeah, nothing was more apparent than when I dropped off my nephew for his freshman day at college, and you have this complex of all these apartments, and he had to find where the manager was to get his key to get in. I dropped him off on the curb, and he sat there and looked at me. Like, what do I do next?
Oh, no.
I had to park the car, get out, hold his hand practically to get him to find the manager. And you have to get your kids in new situations. How can you problem solve? How can you ask questions? How can you meet strangers on the street and say, can you help me with this? And to just kind of map it out and let them figure out things for themselves rather than doing it all for them. So yeah, being able to problem solve, and don't just rush in to, you know, get all the answers for them, but let them find those answers themselves and find people to get the answers for themselves.
And what is your advice for the parent who's dealing with the stubborn teenager who every time you try to jump in with those corrective actions or those words of wisdom that you're trying to impart gives you the eye roll and the oh mom and I don't need this, I'm so cool?
That's right. Yeah, well, I love you, and the reason I love you so much is you're going to do this on your own, because in a few years I don't want to be, you know, doing it for you, and I want you to be a mature adult someday. So I love you enough to let you go and do this on your own.
Let's get to this last question. You say parents need to ask if knowing if your child is emotionally healthy. That to me is the big overarching question. It's kind of hard to break down. Help us break it down.
Yeah, emotional health is really important, especially with teenagers and the stress they go through these days. And so I want parents to think about maybe having their kids who haven't been away from home to sign up for those extracurricular that would take them away from the home with good adult supervision.
So you're sending them away for a weekend?
Summer camps, youth groups, you know, whatever performance things that they need to do to get away so they're not feeling that terrible homesickness those first couple of months.
Right.
Kids need to get away, and they need to be able to, you know, be away overnight. Not sleepovers. I'm talking about being out with youth groups and things like that.
Yeah.
And being able to be in charge of themselves, where if they do find some mental health issues, depression, isolation, things like that, that they know how to find the people to help themselves through those emotional issues, how you can talk to an academic counselor, how to talk to teachers. You know, when you're really feeling homesick and or depression, anxiety, who can you get help from? Kids need to know that there are answers and they can go and get them, and not to be embarrassed about it. But school can sometimes accentuate what was there already latent. But now I need some help, and they need to be able to know where to go to get emotional help.
I'm glad you brought up the communication side of the emotional preparedness. I think for a lot of kids that they're not used to having those adult conversations. There's been an adult that stepped in to have those conversations for them.
Yeah.
Is there a way to help
Right.
facilitate those so they're preparing and learning the communication skills they need?
Yeah, first of all, not be embarrassed about talking about mental health issues. I think we're just too embarrassed about mental health. Oh, you know, we kind of keep it quiet. We need to be a lot more open with it so that if it does happen to our teenager, they can say, this is just part of life. If I were to get sick, I'd go see a doctor. If I'm starting to feel real bad depression, I can go see a mental health counselor. Also, have them be comfortable talking to adults. So if your child's failing in school, who goes and solves that for themselves? Is it mom or dad, or is it the child that goes and faces the teacher and says, I need some help with my grades? So we don't want to rush in and solve everything for them academically as well as with mental health too.
It's funny you bring up that side of the communication coin.
Yeah.
I have a sister who's a freshman right now in college, and I don't play the parent role, but the big sister role sometimes overlaps. And she did call the other day and say, oh, I got mismarked on this test, and I know I did better. It didn't reflect on my score. And I was ready to open my mouth and say, email the teacher, email the professor. And she goes, but I emailed the professor, and it all worked out. And I had this moment of, way to go, you know, seeing those communication skills develop without anyone having to instruct her how to handle it.
Yeah, so absolutely say to your child when they're in a predicament, say, how do you think you'll handle that? Rather than our impulse of parents to say, you should do this, or I'll email the teacher for you, or I'll talk to that person, say, what do you think you should do next? That's what we should be doing as parents when they're starting to become adolescents and moving on to college soon.
Just asking the questions.
Asking them, so what do you think would be a good idea to handle that situation next or solve that problem next? Help them to come up with those skills so they can find answers.
Which is a check for a lot of parents, right? To ask the questions.
It's so hard to sit back and say, now how will you handle that?
Yeah.
I'll be a resource and I have some ideas, but I think you could come up with some great stuff and I know you can do it.
Great, insightful questions parents and grandparents, for that matter, can ask themselves in hopes of preparing those kids to be emotionally ready for the college transition. Congratulations on the new book, Julie.
Thank you so much, Brooke.
Very exciting. Thank you.